Welcome to Byproduct Live, where we unbox everything SaaS and product. We talk with experts and leaders in SaaS and product to understand their approach to leadership and ways of working to share their knowledge and understanding.
Joining us today on the Byproduct podcast is Scott Colfer, Director of Product at Herd Consulting. Scott is an experienced product leader with coming up to 20 years experience working across different domains. His most recent experience has been transitioning public sector organisations to a more product-centric approach. He held a number of roles at the Ministry of Justice, which culminated in being head of their user-centred professions and service standards before being Chief Product Officer at Westminster Council. Herd are a product and business analysis consultancy where Scott is Director of Product, and they're experts in discovery and recovery, and this is where our talk today will take us. The critical phase of product discovery and the high impact this can have on an organisation. Scott founded and leads a network for product leaders, and in his spare time he enjoys sauna, weightlifting, cycling, and like a lot of us, spends too much money eating out. He's also just printed a book called New Wave Product, which is a manifesto for pragmatic product management. Welcome to the show, Scott. How are you today?
Good, thank you very much. Looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, great stuff. So, to kick things off, why don't you just give us a quick rundown on the work that you guys do at Herd and where you specialise?
Yeah. So just talking about it personally, I think the reason I really like what we do at Herd is none of us were consultants before. So we're a consultancy.
Okay.
None of us were consultants before. We've all experienced consultancies. And
so you've all done real work.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? We've been on the other side. And that's the thing that we're bringing to it is all of us have put our time and effort into building the consultancy we wanted to have access to when we were in-house. So that's the general background to it. A bit more official and specific. You mentioned already some of the stuff we do. So we really specialize in discovery, recovery, and delivery.
Okay.
That's kind of how we help clients. And like what we do, the specialist skills we have are product management, business analysis, and delivery management. So we bring those things together to give what we think is a great consultancy experience, but without some of the consultancy vibes they might have got in the past.
Yeah, cool. So what we're going to talk about today is the importance around the discovery phase. So that very early stage when you're working on a new project and with a new customer. So what are the key areas that discovery really focuses on for you that are super important?
Yeah, I guess discovery is just a means to an end. And a bit of an issue is it's become a bit of a cottage industry sometimes. So I quite like talking about the so what of it. And normally what clients need, what people need is two things. It's either growth opportunities.
Okay.
So we need to grow what we do, either an individual product line or the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
And or operation efficiencies. We've got to drive down our unit costs. We've got to do what we're doing, but better, cheaper, and leaner. And we always try and make sure that discovery isn't a means to an end, isn't a cottage industry. It is just a way of helping with those two things as pragmatically and efficiently as possible.
Okay, cool. And I think then wrapped up in those two things, the key thing that I think you're looking for is around finding that first best opportunity and understanding how that obviously fits into those two areas.
Yeah, what we've heard is loads of people hate the phrase discovery. You almost get like a visceral reaction from folks nowadays because they're used to it kind of being on rails a bit. So we do this thing, it takes this long, don't really do anything until we get to the end, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which you can call analysis paralysis. Discovery comes from a world where you were trying to take a leap of faith and just test it, do it small, learn and move on. And that's the thing we're trying to bring back is quite often we'll find a first best opportunity to do something. And actually there's enough there to try something out. We can carry on the overall discovery, but we can just start doing something the first time we find something that looks good.
Yeah, Okay, cool. And if we talk a little bit more about, so when we're looking at kind of growth opportunities, what are the kind of key things that businesses are you're trying to find out when you're talking to businesses in that area?
I think it's kind of two things. One is they quite often have great ideas internally already, and they need what they lack is not the capability. They've already thought about it, it's capacity. So what one thing we're trying to find is how do we find and amplify the first best idea you're holding on to already? But quite often people don't need to outsource their thinking. What they need to outsource is somebody to help them bring it to life. So
Yeah.
that's thing one. Thing two is what we keep seeing as a whole is those growth opportunities. It's kind of goodwill and good luck as to
Okay.
whether they're found and picked up.
Yeah.
I've not found an organization, I've been chatting about this with folks the last year. I've not found one that clearly kind of coordinates all of their growth opportunities in a central place to really push through the one at a time that is the best fit for their company's goal at the time.
Yeah.
So we're often trying to do two things. We're trying to like visualize really quickly the opportunities they've got, fill in any gaps. But we're also trying to figure out how can you just do this in a long-lived way.
Right.
I think the other thing is quite often if companies do get help, they might bring in like a UX agency, for example. UX agencies are great. They will do fantastic work and they'll help you to uncover customer needs. But I've not really heard of a company that has said our board heard a single unmet customer need and then gave us all the money we wanted. And so the other thing we're trying to do is alongside helping them to identify the biggest pain points for customers,
Yeah.
it's helping them to do kind of market analysis as well. So what your competitors doing,
Yeah.
if you're looking to exit in a few years, who's buying and what are they buying? What's the gap analysis in that space? So market analysis, I think, can often be missing. You need to filter your opportunities through that as well. And the other thing, going back to the board, is helping with that storytelling internally. Quite often, no matter how great this 20-page report is,
Yeah.
it comes down to a room with some actual human beings in it. We're all emotional. We're all
Yeah.
irrational. You need to be able to land it in an emotionally true way in that room and negotiate a decision to act on it. And that's the thing we keep seeing is it's nowadays relatively straightforward to spot those pain points. Companies are quite good at that, up to very good at that. It's really how do you actually sit that in the broader market, and how do you actually to your senior leadership team, executive leadership team, potentially to your board, potentially or to your investors, tell the powerful, simple story about what the value of this opportunity is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of the next topic of conversation was obviously the how of it. We've done the what is it, but if we think about the how of effective discovery. So what are the key things when you're working on a new project? And obviously it's invariably, I'm guessing, with a new customer. What are the kind of key things that you've outlined that make effective discovery?
So, like I said, being really explicit about splitting up those tracks of work and saying that they all need to happen together, and building a team that isn't just geared towards kind of UX and understanding pain points, but can do that kind of broad analysis, that storytelling and pitching as well is really important. The way we generally do it is starting off with a big bank of opportunities.
Okay.
Because it used to be the case that people would fall in love with solutions, in the 20s, 2000s, 2010s. That was the big thing to avoid.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the next issue is falling in love with a problem. So you just find one customer pain point and then a team or an organization just gets behind that. So the critical thing we do is start with a bank of opportunities. We map out multiple opportunities.
Okay.
So we can be agnostic to the specific pain point that we actually alight on. The first best opportunity. We just pull them across from that bank. See, does it really, really fit with customers? Does it fit with what we can actually do as an organization? Does it fit in the marketplace? Does it fit with our board? Does it fit with our SLT, ELT, etc.? The first time it looks like it doesn't, you just push it back to the bank and you pull another one across.
Yeah.
And the thing we found that really works with our clients is having that bank. So we're agnostic. We just want to find your first best one. We don't care what it is. We just care that it's your
You've got
first
a whole list
and
of
your
them.
best.
It's about
Yeah.
finding the worst best, or the best worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's always better to start and learn by doing rather than, because otherwise discovery can become like an almost academic exercise that's just a research thing that expands to fill time. So that's fundamentally the big difference we've found for clients is those two things. One is a big bank of opportunities that we leave with them. And I was talking about that central coordination. We keep that bank of opportunities live during the engagement, and at the end, that's really the beginning of how they coordinate them. If they keep that live and are always asking the same questions that we're kind of coaching them to ask, does it fit for customers, our organization, the market, investors, etc. That's how they can centrally coordinate it. So that's the approach. Once you get into it, it's research and analysis. In and of themselves, they're quite straightforward. It's how you're always aiming them at the first and the best, most desirable, viable, and feasible opportunity, and just that constant coordination and radical focus on what's the best way to achieve our goal. And it's as important to block other ones as it is to let the best one through.
Yeah, and I think in that there's obviously a lot of negotiation goes on
100%.
with stakeholders that you're working with, and I've spoken to a lot of product leaders over the years, and I would argue that a very large percentage of that role is you're a salesperson because
totally.
having to do that negotiation with those stakeholders in that business because they've probably already got a predetermined idea about what their problems are. They probably don't want to admit what the worst problems might be. So your job is really to get in there and tease that out to find the real pain points to deliver the most value.
100%. It's really interesting because I really like the phrase negotiation to describe a lot of a role. And I think a lot of the role is soft skills. Products often talked about using the hard skills of OKRs and roadmaps and yada yada. But I've never had one of those as magically sorted out a situation. It's always come down to one or more critical conversations in a room. And to your point there, quite often those people, yes, sometimes they might have fear of saying something, but other times they've got critical context that is just totally invisible to the team. Do you know what I mean? Like, quite often the team doesn't even realize how little it knows sometimes. And these people have got such fantastic context that, almost exposing your ideas to them as soon as is useful and safe is the best thing, because they'll quite often then reveal that context to you so that you can shape it up. But fundamentally, none of this work has any value until there is a decision made to act on it. And the decision is always in a negotiation space. So we really, really stress the negotiation skills we've got, the kind of change skills we've got. Non-directive coaching is actually a really big one as well. How do you assume that everybody in their head holds at least a part of the solution to the problem already? And kind of tease it out. So the job is quite often as much about alignment as it is about, you don't have to go in and come up with all the ideas yourself. Quite often everybody has the ideas. It's the execution that is hard, and that's the thing that you're there to do quite often, is pull it all together, coordinate it, and just execute upon it. But the point of negotiation is you negotiate a decision and you're trying to get to that decision as effectively as possible. And I think if I personally had an internal metric about what I'm looking to change from starting an engagement to the end, it's the number of steps needed to make a good decision. I'm quite often benchmarking behind the scenes at the beginning how many steps their last most similar decision took, and I'm thinking, right, I want it to be at least a third fewer steps this time, and I want the decision to be at least twice as good. That's it's fundamentally, it's not really about research and analysis that informs the decision. The decision is the so what, and it's always the result of negotiation. So I think that's a really good word to pick up on.
I remember a few years ago, I was having a chat with them, and they said you can always tell how agile an organisation is and how good they are at making decisions by how long it takes to sign off £100 of expenses.
That's a good one. Just kind of fire it through
in that decision-making chain.
100%. And what keeps coming up is with lots of clients, we end up supporting the middle tier, because the middle tier is all about coordination.
Yeah.
If delivery is literally about delivery and execution and operations, your senior and executive leadership team is all about strategic priorities. The middle tier is crucial for coordinating between the strategic priorities and delivery, but also for coordinating across teams. And it's the linchpin in that radical focus. If your middle tier isn't functioning or isn't set up to succeed, no matter how great your strategy or delivery is, they will be disconnected. So quite often what we're doing is sitting and helping that middle layer. So you're releasing the value of strategic priorities and delivery by, just oiling the wheels in the middle, really.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that all definitely makes sense. So we've talked about the what and the how. So how do you guys define success in your discovery work, and what does good discovery look like in terms of outcomes?
It really depends what you're going in for, because some people may still be falling in love with a solution, and you're just looking to do. And the thing is, it could be fantastic. It could be a fantastic solution, but you're just looking to introduce the minimum research and analysis needed to be confident to go ahead with it. Okay. So success there is maybe tweaking some of the scope of the problem, the specific users they're targeting, that the point bit of the market they're aiming towards. However, if people have fallen in love with the problem, you're almost doing the opposite thing. You're saying, are you actually thinking about this? You're often talking to the team. Are you thinking about what your organization can do? Are you thinking about your unfair advantage versus your competitors? And you're trying to nudge it that way. Right. So success is normally the opposite of your starting point. Everybody's either overconfident or underconfident. We just all are. Nobody is 100% accurate level confidence. Overconfidence can often mean there's a perspective missing. So if you're a design and engineering led company, you might be a design and engineering led decision making process. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So you might always be thinking, okay, we need to develop our app. I spoke with a challenger bank years ago, actually, and that was their take. But they were looking to move into mortgages. They weren't thinking, actually, mortgages are about trust. It's not about the app.
Right. Okay.
We need to think about, why do people go through these really painful existing mortgage processes? Why do they stick with it? And it's because it's the most amount of money you'll ever spend.
Yeah.
So, but the reason for saying that is the missing perspective in that example is marketing.
Okay.
And branding and relationship with customers. It's not purely about the app. And so by focusing on the app, you kind of miss out on building the value proposition that's important to customers. So in that instance, you've kind of got the overconfidence of, maybe, because lots of tech firms are design and engineering led, but potentially they're missing to some extent every other perspective that helps to do the least work needed to get there.
Yes.
Other people are underconfident though. You get analysis paralysis. If they're new to discovery can just be forever and they never make a decision. And you're just helping them to be like, it's okay. Like, we'll make it small, we'll make it testable, we'll learn and tweak if we need to, but it's best just to get doing something. And that's success in that context. But the good success behind the scenes is, if we can, it's sowing the seeds that this should be an ongoing activity, that the one-off activity we've done of mapping the opportunities, if you keep that live, you can do this for yourselves, until you choose not to anymore. And that's the kind of underlying, impact that we hope to leave, is helping people to do this themselves ongoing.
Cool. And I think when you're talking about the biggest problem, I think, isn't that a little bit about also then getting people into a really uncomfortable place that they maybe don't like talking about that?
100%. Sometimes, I'm talking about how do you radically focus on your goal.
Yeah.
Every now and again, we'll help people kind of behind the scenes to express that, and that's the way we describe it, is the right problem to solve. It's right when you feel uncomfortable saying it out loud. When everybody feels a little bit tense and a little uneasy, Because your strategy is just how you solve your biggest problem. It's how you turn your weakness into a strength, and it's how you focus all of your energy on doing that. So yeah, sometimes behind the scenes it can be helpful to help people express the strategy
Yeah.
in really plain language, pragmatic terms. This is our big problem for the next 3 months. This is the biggest thing we're facing. I feel uncomfortable saying this out loud, so that's why I know it's the right thing to say. All of our effort should go on turning this weakness into a strength. And right now, sadly, that could be we've got X number of months, X number of years to avoid going bankrupt.
Right. Okay.
Being honest and truthful, there are commercial companies, there are public sector companies that are at risk of going bankrupt. In 2024, it's very different to how it was a few years ago. There's not the money sloshing around, whether it is private investment or public investment, whatever it is. You've got to rely on your business model actually being a business model.
Yeah, and I guess that that test of bankruptcy is the ultimate problem, right? Because if you don't solve that, then nothing else matters.
And that's why it comes back once again to it then matters if the growth opportunities and or operational efficiencies. I guess if you're facing bankruptcy, they're not mutually exclusive, but they're both routes. You either make more money or you reduce your unit costs. And fundamentally, discovery is just a means to an end. It's helping an organization to operate in the messy space where, it might have silos, it might have structures that it's comfortable with. But when you're facing that existential level threat, you've just got to ignore them and do whatever you need to do to grow or to increase efficiency, really.
Yeah, and if people don't do discovery effectively and they don't uncover that, then it just delays problems and then builds and builds and builds, right?
You're just relying on goodwill and good luck, and that might work, but you wouldn't really bet on that, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've had a really interesting kind of talk through those different elements around the discovery process. So we always like to give our listeners some key takeaways. So what would you identify are the key things that you think people should take away about that discovery phase on a project?
I'll give you three, and it's not just based on wild conjecture. So in one of my previous roles, I reviewed over 50 discoveries to lead a kind of go, don't go decision on investment in them. And I learned a bunch. I think here's the three key takeaways that really represent what we just chatted about, but also summarize what I learned from that as well. So number one, back in the 2000s and 2010s, the big issue for companies and teams was falling in love with solutions. But like I said, in 2024, loads of companies understand that they shouldn't fall in love with a solution now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the main or certainly the only issue anymore. I think actually some organizations have become really great at UX research and at finding unmet customer needs.
Okay.
But that alone is no longer enough. And that's actually led to the most recent big issue. So a key takeaway number one is falling in love with a solution is no longer the only issue, certainly, maybe not even the biggest. Key takeaway number two is that companies can fall in love with problems. So they spot an unmet customer need and fixate on that one. And I think what we need to do is be more flexible about the customer pain points we spot. And what we need to do is map loads of them. And like I said, we need to align them against market analysis and an understanding of what actually works best in the context of our company.
Yeah.
So we've got to align those customer outcomes against our product overall, the division of the organization we're in, the organization itself, and the wider market. Back in the 2000s, lots of the models we used were designed for the very first on the internet businesses. You could kind of almost, throw a dart and you'd hit a new idea. But 2024, most of them have been done. It's really about negotiating your way through.
Okay.
Final one, takeaway three is, I think the biggest problem I see is that companies don't coordinate their opportunities for growth or efficiency. And so, like I said, it just happens as a result of goodwill and good luck in silos around the company. But in the current financial climate, companies have got to be radically focused on the same goal. So what we're doing is helping organizations to coordinate and in that act of radical focus. So all of their effort goes on solving that biggest problem and turning that weakness into a strength. There's actually a book called Radical Focus, and it includes a
Right.
famous quote. Yeah, it's got a famous quote in it, which is, "What's urgent is rarely what's important." So, in plain language, what we're often doing is helping companies focus on what's important. And right now, it's always growth and efficiency is what we see.
Yeah, it's interesting about that because I've used a thing called the Eisenhower matrix in the past.
It's exactly that. It's exactly
urgent and important, not urgent, and
yeah.
It's the single best tool I've ever used to really plan and get to the front of my mind what I need to do now. Because often, you follow the path of least resistance, don't you? And something that's easy to do but maybe not important is what people naturally focus on. So the Eisenhower I always found really useful.
It's a really good. It's good. I'm glad you brought it in. I wasn't sure to actually name check, but yeah, it's 100% that. And I think what we're really providing is space for what that, as an example, that matrix would say is the thing you've got to focus on. Quite often, it's difficult in amongst it all for an organisation to really make that space. And I think an organisation like Herd coming in, hold that space, bring people into it for at least some of the day, every now and again, to really help funnel things into the right focus.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much for your time today, Scott. It's been a really good conversation, and really interested in what I guess is sometimes a neglected part of the process, or one that's not done in enough depth. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers, Andrew.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for listening today. We hope that you found the Byproduct podcast valuable, useful, and informative. You can subscribe on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and also YouTube. And if you have the time, we'd love for you to leave us a positive review. As a new podcast, this would really help us out. We'll hope to see you soon on the next episode, and thank you again.